Okay, so LODs. So LOD is what we use to essentially fix a level of granularity that we want to zoom in on the data. And as soon as this loads up, I'll kind of a little bit of an explanation. So when you have data, you know, the granularity, or at least the lowest level of granularity, I'm sorry, there's gonna be some confusion with the lower and higher level granularity versus higher level, low level of aggregation, because they go in opposite directions. So I'll try to keep these as clear as possible. But when we talk about a high level of granularity, like zooming all the way in, right? So let's say we zoom all the way out, and let's just use an example of, like, let's say planet Earth. So we zoom all the way out and we can see like the entire Earth from space, right? And if we want to zoom in on a higher granularity, we can zoom in on towns and cities, right? So that's how we go from a low level to a high level, right? And in the opposite direction, whenever we do aggregations, so a high level of granularity will be a low level of aggregation. And that might not make sense right now, but I'll try to clarify that later. So the highest level of granularity in this data set would be either row ID, which is not something we would usually calculate on unless we're just trying to get a row count, or something like order ID, where we might want to count a distinct number of orders. So that's the highest level of granularity. And from an aggregate standpoint, that is going to be the lowest level of aggregation, because we're going to aggregate for each level of these lows. Now, if we were to roll this up into a city, that would be a higher level of aggregation and a lower level of granularity. So I hope that makes sense. We'll be doing some examples, so hopefully we can drill these concepts in. And just to show the data, kind of explain it. So here's our order ID, and let's sort these real quick. There we go. So there's 3 of the same order IDs, but if we go all the way over, we can see there's 3 orders in that order ID, right? So these will be products, right? So there's a one-to-many relationship here on the order ID. So we have 1 order ID and 3 products, right? So in this instance, depending on what we're trying to do with this, we may want to use a level of detail. Which layer of granularity do we want it to be on the product? Do we want to be on the city? Do we want to be on the order ID, right? So let's get into some examples of this. So first, let's create a quick hierarchy, because we're going to be using that. So to do a hierarchy, so for hierarchy, we can use our geographic data. So we can do country, just drag it into city. This will pop up, and you can just name it whatever you like. I'm going to name mine geography. Click OK. Then I want them to be in the right order. So I have country, whoops, country at the highest. Oh, why is it not doing that? Interesting. There we go. I must have both highlighted. We have state in there, and we also have postal code, which we probably won't use, but we'll put it in there just in case. So this is our hierarchy. And let's just, again, talking about a granularity. So I'm just going to drag this whole geography out here, right? And we'll just do sales into the label. And I will actually filter on the United States just to make. And you don't have to do this part with me. This will be me explaining a lot of things. We'll be doing quite a bit together, but it's going to be a lot of me talking and explaining. So bear with me. So again, so here we have the country, right? And that is the lowest level of granularity. We're zoomed all the way out on the country level, but the aggregation is at its highest level because it's aggregating. If we look over here at our hierarchy where I'm zooming out, it's aggregating through postal code, through city, through state, and then up to country. So it's aggregating all this together to the highest level of country, right? So as we zoom in, obviously, now we're going to state. That's a lower level. I'm sorry, high level of granularity. We're zooming in city. And as we get there, now we have a low level of aggregation on the city level, or lower than we did at state and country. That's the simplest way to think about that right now. So basically, let's change this to a heat map real quick. And here's where kind of our example, let's go to state level. Let's put my cells in the label. So basically, this is just aggregating all of these sales for all the order IDs. I'm sorry, all the products, all the orders, and rolling them up based on the state. But there may be instances where maybe I want to calculate at the city level, but keep this visualization at the state level, or maybe vice versa, right? So that's where the level of details come into play, where we want to pick a level of aggregation that is different from the graph that we're displaying, right? Again, this is going to make more sense. So first we have the include, and this is going to be a little confusing to some of you. So I'm going to try to explain the rest. So we have include LOD, which is used to perform computations at a more granular level. So when I use an include, so I'm at the state level. If I use an include, I want to aggregate at a level higher than this, meaning the city. Okay. If it's exclude, it's the opposite. So if I was at the city level and I wanted to do some type of calculation for the state level, I would do an exclude. So it goes up the level of aggregation and goes down level of granularity. Okay. And then fixed is very useful because it doesn't matter what's on the graph. Whatever you lock a fix to, and when I say whenever you lock it, you're going to lock it to a dimension, right? So at a fixed, you will lock it at what dimension you want it to be at. And it doesn't matter what's on the graph or what's not on the graph. Where the include exclude, the aggregation is going to be very relevant to whatever you already have on the view. And again, this will make sense when I start showing some examples, but just keep these little mental notes in your head, okay? And I'll put together a little sheet and maybe put it in the comments and Basecamp too, to kind of give some of this stuff. So let's start with, bear with me, I got some notes here. I'm trying to make sure I touch everything I want to cover. Let's do include first. So we'll start with a grid layout. And actually I'll just reset all this. So I'm gonna start with a grid layout, and then we'll use a map, an actual visualization. And I'll try to do that with all of them, probably except for fix, because fix can do both what the include and exclude can do. Again, when you're choosing include, exclude versus fixed, it will depend on if you care what's already on the visualization, right? If it needs to interact, interact, strong word. If you have like the city and state on, well, I'll tell you what, let me just show you. So first, let's do category. We'll do, and follow along with me on this one if you got your workbook booted up. So we do category, we'll do subcategory, and let's do segment would be a good one too. So we got these broken out. Now I'm going to drop sales out here into my as my measure. And here, this 765,000 is all of the sales at the row level, okay? So it's rolling it all the way up to whatever granularity dimension we have, but this is all the sales for that particular category. Now, if I do we'll do average here. So this will actually make more sense if we do an average too. So we're doing include. So let's roll this up to average. Actually, I'm sorry, let's leave that for right now. We'll change it to average in a second. Let's create our first LOD. So I'm going to create a calculated field. We'll call this include, and then I'll put it on the segment level. Now, whenever I do LOD, I always need these curly brackets at the beginning and end. So I'm going to include segment, semicolon, and then I want to put what I want it to do. So some cells, and then I'll put my closed curly bracket there. It likes that. So this is a simple example. So I want to include the segment dimension in my view, and I want to sum cells on that level, right? Click OK. Let's take this include segment and drop it in here too. And you can see that it's showing the same count, which is fine. Now, for include, include's usually best to use with averages, and you'll see why, because it allows us to roll up at the dimension level. So you can see all the aggregates the same. So what we're going to do is average both of these. So we're going to click here and go to average. And we'll go to some cells and also average. Second, something's not right there. Oh, actually, I don't think I need segment on here. I'm sorry. Check something real quick. Yeah, that's right. Okay. I'm sorry. So take segment off. So we have category and subcategory, but we've locked the level of detail in the segment. So since I'm taking segment off, and I'll put segment back on for just a second. So it's going to aggregate at the highest level. So if I remove segment, basically, I'm saying include segment in this visualization, and then roll it up based on category and subcategory. So this first, I got a little background noise there. So on the right, we have average sales, right? This average sales is for all the average sales of bookcases at the row level. So it's aggregating all the rows that pertain to bookcases in the furniture category. This is the average per segment. So it's going to roll all these up. I'm sorry, it's going to roll up segment into the subcategory level here. So for bookcases in that segment, and let's see if I can. So here's the segment. We have 3 segments right here. So it's going to aggregate all 3 of those together for the bookcases, and that's going to be our total. So we have our average on the row level and average at the dimension level of segments. Okay. Now, if we apply this to a visualization, so this is just a basic grid. Include one, second one here, and this will be a little more practical of what we're going to use it for. Include, let's say map. All right, so let's create a map. I don't think I need country. Let's drag it all out here. We're going to filter on US. You can scroll all the way down. The US pops up right there. Apply. Okay, and then we'll zoom into the state level. So I'll give everybody a second. Just create this right here. Let's do profit this time. So we'll do profit and label and profit and color. So again, since we're using include, we're going to go more granular. So what we ultimately will do is when we get the sum of the profit for each city, then find the average across each state. So that's where LODs come in. So we couldn't really, we might be able to write multiple calculations to get that, but with an LOD, we can essentially go one layer deeper into cities, aggregate that, and then roll it up to our state level for different use cases, which we'll use here. without that LOD, again, this average, if I wanted to average this, which we'll change this average here in a minute, it's going to be all of the sales, or I'm sorry, all the profit per state at the row level. So actually, we will duplicate this too. So hold your control key and drag your longitude over, and we'll have two maps so we can compare and show the difference in numbers. And actually, before we do that, let me go ahead and change this to, no, we'll just leave it profit. We'll change the average here in a minute. And also, I'll just add an annotation here. So I'm going to annotate, I think we can do area, and I'll just make this 14. Y'all don't need to do this. We'll just without LOD. Okay. I'll annotate this. $14. Make this red as well. Click OK. All right, so we're just going to work on the left side, and we'll leave the right side for comparison. All right, so let's create our LOD. So again, we're going to do it at the city level. So I'm going to create a calculated field. I can just put include LOD city. Just keep these from getting mixed up. City, and we'll do profit. And again, we're going to put include city, semicolon, and then we're going to sum the profit. I'll leave that up for just a second. And click OK. Now we're essentially just going to switch out. Well, so since we have two axes, and this is not a dual axis, this is just a side-by-side axis. So we're going to put our include LOD city by profit, and we're going to switch it out to our sum profit here. Okay. Now again, the numbers don't change. Now if there's an exclude, it does change, which we'll be going over here in a minute as well. But if I change these to average, that's when the include really shines. So the average changes to average. I'm also going to go down and change the other one to average. I guess I should have done that earlier, so my apologies. Average. You can see the numbers are different. On the right side, we have the average average profit by product by state. So this is at the product level here. It's aggregation on the average. Okay. On the left side, this is the average profit by city. Okay. Grouped into the states. So this is product and this is city, right? That's where LOD comes in handy. So we're saying we want the average to be on the city level, which is the level underneath the state. And this over here is just aggregating all the products and then rolling them up in the state. Does that make sense? I hope that does, because I don't know, it's a little bit tricky to explain. Zoom in one. See if we can dissect this a little bit more. Yeah, so they're going to be the same at that level, so that would be right. Oops. Okay, so that's the include. All right. Like I said, include, I've personally not ever had to use because I can do the same thing with fixed, which we'll be going over at the end. But I haven't really, the only time I've seen like include really being needed is when we're doing averages. We want to average something at a different level. I'm sure there's a ton more use cases for it. But like I said, 90% of the time I've ended up using fixed, and then I've used exclude a handful of times as well. So we'll go over that now. So that's the first one. Let's go over exclude. Exclude. So we're going to do let's do category and subcategory again here. So category, subcategory, breaking it out that way, and then let's do sales. Subcategory. Now let's create a calculation again for exclude. So we'll call this exclude subcategory sales. I'm going to exclude subcategory. Then we're going to sum sales here. Close bracket. I'll leave that up just a second. We got category and subcategory in rows. We have sales and text. And then we have this calculation here. So I'll leave that up for just a second. Okay. So click OK. Now let's drag that into our text box as well. So here's what this is doing. So we have sales. And again, this says going to be at the row level, right? So it's aggregating all of these sales at the row level for bookcases, right? So it says we're in category, and we go to bookcases, and then we go to sales. The exclude is ignoring the subcategory. Again, when we talked about having a map, so if I drill into city, I want to use exclude, I want to aggregate at a lower level of granularity, right? Being the state. I know it gets confusing saying lower and higher. It can be easy to get those mixed around. So essentially we're zooming out one for the actual calculation, but we want to leave our visualization at this level of granularity, right? So go back. Exclude, I'm ignoring subcategory, right? And just rolling it up to the category level. So this is just being ignored completely. So if I drop this out, you see the numbers match. When I add it back in, sales changes, but the exclude stays the same. Now, if I take something like, let's see, market, here's where the fixed and the include and exclude differ. So fixed, which I'll do that one just to show real quick. But you can see this is excluding subcategory. It's excluding that one level of granularity and going to the next one. So now it's rolling it up to market right here. And the sales is at the bookcase level again, right? So this is where things become useful with include versus exclude. If I do fixed, so let me take, I'll just duplicate this. You don't have to follow me on this because we'll be doing another one similar here in just a little while. Let's just say I put fixed in here. Click OK. So again, the include and exclude is relative to the dimensions you have on your visualization, right? So the dimensions that you use are very important. So that's where include and exclude comes in a little bit handy. Where if you take fixed, and I drop this out here, it's fixed on the subcategory level. So actually, I should have done fixed at furniture. Let me change that real quick. I'm sorry. Get a better example. So if I do fixed, let's do category. Click OK. So if I remove market, You see fix and exclude are the same. So essentially the exclude is ignoring subcategory. Fixed isn't necessarily ignoring subcategory. It's just only worried about category. So it's going to ignore all other dimensions. So if I add market back in, you see the exclude changes, but fixed still remains on the category level. So no matter what I do, no matter where I use the fixed, it's always going to be dialed into the category level. Doesn't matter. Where include and exclude, as you add other dimensions, it's going to change relative to those. Okay. That's why when using hierarchies and stuff like that, include and exclude can be more useful in some circumstances. So that's that example. So let's actually apply this to the map. So let's do same map. Let's drag geography out. I should just duplicated it, but we'll just do this again. Same thing we did last time. US. You don't have to use US. It's just easier to have just one central spot on the map. It's a little easier to read. Exclude comes in handy, especially if you're doing something like dividing. Because when well, I'll just show you. So zoom into the city level here. We will do profit again. So I'll drag profit into color and profit into label. Since the profit kind of has these grays, I'm going to just add a quick border. So I'm going to color up here, go to border, and just put a light little border around them just so they pop a little bit better. And we'll call this. All right, so now let's create our LOD. And if anybody needs another second, just let me know. I don't mind waiting. Okay, so let's create another LOD. We'll use our exclude again, and we'll name this one. Let's do this based off the city again. So LOD. Actually, let's do exclude LOD for, and we're going to say state profit, even though we're using the city to exclude. So excluding city from the calculation so we can aggregate at the state level. But we're going to divide, so you'll see why it's useful. So exclude city, do our semicolon, and then we'll do some profit. And then we'll close out back. We'll leave it up just a sec. All right, click OK. Let's also duplicate this one. So I'm going to hold my control key. I'm going to drag longitude to the side. So now we have two side by side. Not really worried if the numbers are showing up quite yet. So we have our exclude LOD. So let's drag this into our sum. Oops, is that right? Yeah, that's right. No, we can drag into color too. Now let me zoom in a little bit so we can see what's going on here. I'm just going to make these show. So I'm going to right click, go down to mark label and always show. So we use Montana for right now. Oh, there's another one right there. So you see on the right side, For each city, it has a different profit, right? So this made $3, 21, 75, 152 at the row level. So this is aggregating also all the years. So this has, well, we won't worry about the years. So you see all these are different numbers. So they're individual cities. Where here we're excluding the city. So at the state level, all these numbers are the same. So if I zoom back up to state, we can see Montana is 1833. If we zoom in, all the cities have the same number. So it's essentially ignoring this city calculation, right? So essentially, the LOD is allowing us to aggregate at a higher level of aggregation, meaning the state, but we're able to leave the map at a lower level of granularity, or higher level, I'm sorry. I'm going to get those words mixed up. So now we don't really need the right charts. I'm actually just going to take that off. I just wanted to show what it was doing. So now we have this. Let me center a little bit. Zoom in. I'm just going to use Montana here. So we have 5 cities that have made some form of profit in Montana. So what we'll do here, make sure I get this right. Yeah, we're actually going to remove both those measures, and let's just take profit, drag it into label. Yeah, that'll work right now. So I could write another calculation, but I could also just double click in here and just edit this within the pill here. So I'm going to put exclude LOD state. I'm going to drag that into there. So basically, if I, oops, messed that up. Oh, that's right. I need to write attribute too. I'm sorry. So whenever we use exclude or include, we need to use the attribute. And I'll explain what attribute is here in a second. I'll do an example. So I'll put ATTR and then drop this right in there. It should like that. Fine. That looks good. So we're not doing a calculation. I just want to show what this is doing. So this is what I just put in that the green pill there. So I'm summing profit. This is at the row level. So I'm summing the profit at the row level. So basically it's going to get all these cities right here at the row level. But then I want to lock in and divide by the state level of profit, right? So I'm dividing it. So what this is doing to that state, right? Or if I didn't have the LOD, it wouldn't be able to show that. It would just show, it would be the row level for all the cities. It would be how many all these cities add up to the country, right? So how much of this dot equals all the cells across the country. Where this lets us fix the granularity at the state level, and it says, all right, right here, this city, Great Falls, is 86% of the sales for Montana. I'm sorry, or the profit for Montana. All right, so, and I can change this to I can format that. We can change it to a percentage. Now that might make a little more sense. So that's where exclude comes in handy. I hope that one is much more useful. That's something that I'm a little more familiar with, where like I said, the include, I haven't actually had to implement, where this is pretty practical. This is something that is very useful in certain scenarios. Now you can also do this with fixed, but I'll show that in a little while. So there's the exclude. So we've done include and exclude. And again, these are just the basic examples. In a future class, we'll go into more use cases for these. There's quite a diverse use case for different chart types and different types of data. So we'll touch on that in a future class. So I hope this is making sense so far. I do want to go into attribute, and this is something that I had to brush up on as well. So this specifically kind of applies to exclude because of the way the granularity goes. We're zooming out with the granularity. So if I use attribute, I'll just create another sheet. I think I can duplicate this and use this. So we got attribute here. Let me just reset those. Okay, so if I drag something like city, so we're at the state level here, right? I'm not talking about the calculation, I'm just talking about the visualization itself. So we have the state at that level. If I drag city into detail, it changes the granularity to that, correct? However, if I zoom back out, and let's say I take city and I drag it into the tooltip, let's get a way to explain this. The attribute compares all the values from each record in the underlying data that are grouped into one partition of the view. Partition meaning separated. So maybe I need to Google a better definition. Basically, if all the values that we're aggregating are not on the same level of granularity, so like I've dragged city in, but I've gone up to state level, so that's where the asterisk comes in. The state is above the city level, so it doesn't know what city this is, right? There's no way to know, like if I'm hovering over Montana again, it can't show me a city because there's multiple cities in there. So it's at a different level of granularity and it can't show me, right? So whenever we use an exclude, like if I go back to my that's what the attribute's doing. It's just letting me know that that level of granularity matches what the calculation is doing. Hopefully I didn't confuse you more, but that's what attribute does. And then I'll try to have a better example in future class, but see, that one must only have one city in there, so that said City Fargo. And then the fixed one's the easiest. These are two pretty quick and easy examples, I think. So we'll call this fixed. So this one we can do region and maybe segment, since yeah, that'll work. And then we'll do some cells again. And we'll do another fixed, I'm sorry, we'll do our first fixed LOD. So we'll just say, we'll just call this fixed LOD. This is going to be a quick example. And let's just, so we have region and segment. So let's fix this on region. So it's fixed. Region. Semicolon. Some cells. Then click OK. And I can also drag this into here. Let me actually name that fixed region, so just make it a little easier. Make it a little easier to know what it's doing. So we have fixed at the sales level. I'm sorry, fixed at the region level. So again, like we showed earlier, you have sales at the row level, and it's just rolling it up to whatever dimension I have, whatever the finest level of the dimension is, or the highest granularity of dimension. It rolls it up to that. Where this fixed LOD has locked it in. So this is all the cells in Canvas. So if I add all three of these numbers up, they will equal this right here. Okay, now if I wanted to actually apply this, that's not really a useful use case. It's just kind of showing you what it's. I can say percent of segment sales. I'm sorry for fading in and out. It keeps telling my internet connection is a little wonky. I'm not sure. But if you miss something, just tell me now. I don't mind going back. So we have some sales. This is pretty much exactly like what we had earlier. Divided by sum. And then we'll do the fixed LOD for region here. This LOD we just made. There you go. This is similar to the EXCLUDE one, only it's just using different dimension. So now if I drag this in here, and of course it's gonna be 1 and 0 because I got to change this to a percent. So if I change this to a excuse me, a percentage. Now we can see all these cells add up to this number here since we fixed it, right? And then let me go the other way here. So this is the region sales for each region. This is the individual sales for each segment. This is the percent of each segment that equals up to the region. So this 35,719 is 53.4% of the consumer sales for Canada. It's basically how we can do that. That's where a fixed LOD would come in handy there. We can also use a fixed LOD for dates. So if I just name this fixed 2. And let's see how we want to do this one. So let's do category, subcategory. I'll do segment, excuse me, and we'll do order date. Now this order date, I don't want it at the year, I want it at the exact date level. When I do that, it's going to change it to a measure. So I just want to change it back to a discrete. And then I want to bring out sales. Actually, that segment. Let's take out subcategory here. I'm just going to leave it at I'm trying to think what's a good dimension. Let's do market actually, because that would make more sense. So basically, I want to find what the most recent. I'm sorry, not most. Well, it could be the most recent first order dates based on market. So you can see Africa's had all these orders at all these dates. But what if I just wanted to see what was the first order? When did Africa start first taking orders? Or maybe what's the most recent order? So we could use either a min or a max. So we will do. Let's create a calculated field. Let's fix that region to the min. So let's call this fixed date. call this fixed. And we're going to use, let's use market. So that's what we have in there. And then we're going to use, let's use min. So min and max are also technically LODs, at least from my understanding. So min and max will fix a point of granularity specifically on dates. You can also use min and max on maybe sales or profit, find the highest sales or the lowest, whatever sales profit, whatever it may be. But I say that with, if you ever get asked on an interview, I wouldn't probably bring up min and max as the LOD. I'll just talk about the three main ones, the fixed, include and exclude. But technically the min and max are also LODs. But I don't know if everybody would agree with that. So, we're fixing the market based on the minimum order date, right? So click OK on this. Actually, I'll leave that for just a second. So we have market, order date's on exact date and on dimension, and then we have our sales. Then we have this calculation fixing the market for each market, the first order that ever occurred in that market. All right, click OK. Oh, there's one other thing, a small detail this is more technical, but a fixed LOD can both be a dimension or measure, where include and exclude will always be an aggregate into a measure. And I meant to have a link where you could show, there's a little graph that shows where fixed versus include and exclude goes in the hierarchy of aggregation for Tableau. I can provide that into basic as well. So
I didn't even pay attention.
okay, so I'm going to drop this in here. Again, we're going to change this to exact date. It'll change it to a measure. Change it back to a discrete. And we can see our fixed date is locked in Africa. The very first order was 1/1/2012. Then when we get to Asia Pacific, it's also 1/1/2012. It's probably all be the same. This is just oh, that one goes up to 1/3, 1/1, 1/3. So a little bit different, but not much. But this is obviously mock data. This isn't real data. And then if I add something like, it really doesn't matter. The region. You can see it's still locked our first date here into the market, right? So that's another way we can use it. Again, a very simple use case, but that is what else we can use. So that's all three of them. It's 9:30. And that's actually all I had for this one. Again, I have some more complex stuff that I'm working on, but it's going to be a future class. It may be next week. It may be a few weeks out. It just depends on how much time I get to work on it. I'm trying to think of any other details. So again, include and exclude or dimensions. The dimensions that are in your view plus the include and exclude that's in your expression, where fixed doesn't care about what's on your visualization. It's just permanently locked to whatever you define it as. One sec, read a few notes, make sure I've given you everything I wanted here. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's everything I have. Any questions on any of that? I know that was kind of a lot. Also, I know this is a fairly nuanced subject. There's a lot of fine details about LODs. Again, for me, when I use LODs, typically I can look at the data and kind of have an idea of the LOD I need to use, but truly understanding what's going on in the background on Tableau is just a whole another level of understanding. I understand it for the most part, but there are some gaps here and there because there's a lot going on in the background that we can't see. That's important to know. In the future class, I'll point out some of those things. So that's the kind of basics for the LOD for right now. If anybody has any questions, I can open it up. Is there any question about anything else? They have project questions, anything relating to Tableau that you may need help with. I'll open it up to anything else. Anybody have any questions on anything?
Thank you, Colby. That was good information to follow along. I'm gonna hope that it was gonna be recorded because I could not get on the class in time. I got caught in bad weather, and so I didn't get to follow along like I wanted to.
Yeah, no, it's recorded. Yeah, so you're good. And I'm going to recommend most students watch this video before we move to the second part, which is going to be not necessarily more complicated, but it's going to be a little more abstract. So I'm not going to give you as much of an overview as much as show you more use cases, but yeah, it's recorded. You'll have access to it.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, because I was watching when I could, and it was good. I think I will be able to understand it better.
Okay. I'm glad to
Watching
hear that.
again and following along.
Okay. Yeah, I try to keep this as simple as possible. This is, as I was building out this lesson plan, I came quickly to see how tedious this was going to be as far as all the details that go into it. So I hope all of you found some use case. Like I think Yathri had asked, I think you had asked for LOD, or somebody did a couple weeks ago.
Yes, it was me. Thank you.
Okay. Was this useful? Does this help you out?
Yeah, but I think I need to go over the video again because it's a little, it's not very simple and straightforward thing. Right? So I think I need to watch it again.
Yeah, it's definitely not simple and straightforward. As I was trying to build out the lesson plan and come up with examples, it's very tricky. This stuff is used in very specific use cases or scenarios. It's not something you just use like a sum or any type of aggregation. There's usually a need for it, and you have to understand when that need comes up. So
yeah. Okay.
So, and also for me, when I've used fixed in the past, a lot of times it's used as a way to remove duplicates. Is a very common way to use it as well. Sometimes like I showed at the beginning of class, in our data source, there's a one-to-many relationship between maybe order ID and the number of orders. And maybe there's another dimension also causing more duplicates. And when that's the case, and we use multiple measures in a visualization, sometimes we can just use a count distinct on the order ID and maybe get what we need, but maybe we're trying to count something else and the relationships are causing multiple rows. So to throw your counts off, that's happened to me a lot of times, and fixed will fix that. So I can say, all right, ignore everything except for the unique counts of this dimension. So that's a good use case for fixed. I'll try to come up with an example to show that. This data set didn't really have any instances of that, so I couldn't really show you. But if you ever get duplicates in the Tableau dashboard, you can't figure out how to get rid of them, you probably need to use a fixed LOD. So, but anybody got anything else? Any other questions? Anything?
Yeah, I have a question. So I was reading about the tree maps and heat maps, but I don't understand what's the difference between the two. I mean, like I understood the basic concept behind it, but I didn't understand how those two are different from each other.
Which one's the tree map? I forget.
Tree map and
is it even in here?
There's
a tree map. Yeah. A tree map. What was the other one?
Heat map.
Well, are you talking about like a regular geographical map like this?
Because
this is technically kind of a heat map as well.
The one which I was reading about, it was not a map. So heat map, they basically said it will have color coding. Like say if you have a like a cross tab or something where you show profit or sales, then based on the value of that, the color of that, the background of that cell changes.
So this is more of a heat map. This is more of a scatter plot style heat map. This one's more like a
Yes, yes. I
just
was saying
a
something
grid.
like this. Yeah.
Yeah, so a heat map is just basically just based on the colors, where the that's what I was thinking of for heat map, this one here. But a tree map uses both size and color to show. So if let's get a better one. Usually works good when you have quite a few dimensions. How many subcategories are there? That'll work. We do sales, tree map. So this is a tree map, and you can see the size and the color both show the proportions. Where a heat map, I believe, is just based off the color. It's not really going to show the size. Now,
So to create a heat map, do we just create a table and then do we manually give the colors?
there's a couple ways to do one. You can do one on a scatter plot, which off the top of my head, I don't really know. But this is also could be considered a heat map as well. This one, that's a highlight table, but I would still classify that as a heat map because again, it's just going off the darkness of the color. But you also have this style heat map here. This is that's a scatter plot. You can see the split and separation. There's another one right there. Let me see if I can find it good. Oh yeah, that's another key point right there. So tree maps also show in a hierarchy way, hierarchy, I can't say that word. Where did I put that? So this also shows a hierarchy because it's in flow, right? It's showing them left to right, top to bottom. So you can see there's a hierarchy there where heat maps not necessarily going to show the hierarchy. It's just going to show wherever they lay, right? Like in this, they're not in particular order. Now I can sort these, but if I start adding more values, let's add profit in here. Let's add quantity. You can see there's no way to perform a hierarchy because there's multiple, right? That's also a good point about a heat map is you can have multiple dimensions where a tree map, I don't think you can have more than one. I think it's just one and one. Yeah, one dimension and two measures at the most.
So in the tree map, there are two different measures, right? One is depicted by the shade of the color, and also another measure is shown by the size of the rectangle. So are we showing two measures there?
If you're using two, then yes. Typically you probably use one, but you could use two. If I wanted to do, let's do subcategory again. Let's do profit and sales. So for this, yeah, there you go. See, they're kind of out of order with the colors. So the colors, the sales, and the size is the profit. And actually, it would, yeah, that would be better. So this is, so you could easily spot outliers. Like say if I had a really big box, like this one's a fairly big box, but it's in the negative. So it's like I'm making lots of sales on tables, but it's not very profitable, right? So maybe I want to look into that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got it.